Hello, and welcome to the 2020-2021 Clio Music Awards. The show is about to begin.
Hi, welcome to the 2020-2021 Clio Music Awards. I'm Michael Kaufman, and this is my co-host for today, Rachel Krug.
You may already know us as the team behind Clio Music and Clio Cannabis, but from here on out, you'll surely recognize us as the MCs of the best virtual award show you watched on June 10th, 2021.
That's right, it's been a challenging year. We've all had to take on some unexpected roles, but you'd never know it from the amazing creative entries we received this cycle.
One of our best years to date. The jurors were floored by the work they saw, which didn't make the deliberation easy on them.
But it makes our job of presenting the awards a lot more fun.
Today, we are here to honor the most creative work in music marketing, communications, and advertising from around the world. Back in April, we gathered a group of industry masterminds to serve as the Clio Music jurors. We tasked them with reviewing hundreds of entries, then getting together in a virtual deliberation room to determine the best of the best.
The jury is asked to look solely and specifically at the creativity of the work submitted. And during the judging process, there are no minimum nor maximum number of statues that need to be awarded. We empower the jury to award as many or as few outstanding entries as they collectively determine in a particular medium or category. Additionally, jurors are required to abstain from voting on entries submitted by their teams or companies. Shortly, we'll be showcasing the work these jurors selected to win the 2020-2021 Gold and Grand Clio Music Awards.
And it is truly incredible to be celebrating winners from across the globe, from Brazil to Russia, and even as far away as Australia. This year's Clio Music Award recipients are truly world class.
Also, make sure you stick around until the end of the show when we'll be announcing the Clio Music Label of the Year, Publisher of the Year, and Agency of the Year. This is the first year Clio Music will be presenting these awards, and I can't wait to announce our winners. Special thanks to our presenting partner, Citi, who not only supports musicians and the music industry, but also diversity within our communities.
We've got a lot of exciting work to showcase today, but unfortunately we won't have time to celebrate all of this year's winning entries. So if you want to see the full list of the 2020-2021 Clio Music Award recipients, head over to clios.com to check out our winners gallery. And if you're on that list, don't forget to post about it on your social channels and tag us at Clio Awards and use the hashtag Clio Music. Before you do any of that, stick around as we have a very fun show for you today. Let's get into it.
First things first, we want to thank the Clio Music jurors who took the time to lend us their expertise and their unique perspectives in their selection of this year's winners. To all of you, we thank you and salute you. what a great group of people to get to spend some time with. Thank you again. And now, on to the awards. With all that's going on in the world, it's important that the Clio Music Impact Award shines a spotlight on recipients who have had a tangible influence on the music industry this year. So many fans, artists, and industry professionals have stepped up in so many ways, big and small, to use the power of music to bring about social progress and ensure that the community emerges stronger than ever. Which is why we couldn't choose just one recipient this time around, and we're proud to be presenting two incredible honorees with the Impact Award today. First up, in collaboration with our amazing presenting partners at Citi, the Clio Music Impact Award goes to Brandi Carlile. Brandi is an inspiring artist who has used her platform as a musician, advocate, and author to raise awareness around important issues for women and the LGBTQ+ community. We're all better off thanks to Brandi, who's using her microphone to amplify the message that we need to keep moving towards a more compassionate and inclusive society for all.
Folks at home, Carla Hassan, CMO of Citi, is here to present the 2021 Clio Music Impact Award to the incredible Brandi Carlile. Congratulations, Brandi.
Hi everyone, Carla Hassan, CMO of Citi here. I am excited and honored to be with you all to recognize the recipient of this year's Clio Music Impact Award presented by Citi, Brandi Carlile. Author of a #1 New York Times bestseller, Broken Horses, a critically acclaimed singer-songwriter and producer, a 6-time Grammy winner. Brandi's list of accomplishments truly reflect the impact she's made on the music industry, the likes of which perhaps only matched by the impact she's made publicly advocating for gender equality on and off the stage. In an industry where only 22% of artists, 12% of songwriters, and only 2% of producers are women, Brandi is driving change. A mentor for other women pursuing careers in producing and engineering, she is committed to elevating all women and giving the next generation diverse music heroes to look up to. She formed an all-female supergroup, High Women, to promote gender equality and organized her own music festival, Girls Just Want a Weekend, fronted by all-female musicians. She even uses her own platform to bring attention to emerging female artists by performing as their opening acts. She is all about women supporting women, a sentiment those of us involved in See Her, Hear Her can get behind. And that is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to her work. In 2008, she created the Looking Out Foundation, which amplifies the impact of music by empowering those without a voice, with campaigns focused on children living in war zones, prevention and reduction in incarceration and recidivism, racial justice, violence prevention, food insecurity, and more. When the ANA launched the See Her, Hear Her initiative in partnership with Citi, we envisioned a world with greater representation of women and girls in music. Because if you can see her, you can be her. Brandi, you are a huge force enabling progress toward that goal. There is no one more deserving of this honor. On behalf of the Clio Music Awards, I am overjoyed to present you with the 2021 Clio Music Impact Award. Congratulations, Brandi.
Guess what?
What?
You're the #1 New York Times bestseller.
No! One?
Yes.
#1?
Yes.
What? No!
I've been to the movies, I've seen evidence, and the jokes on them, and all of these lies cross my feet. Tell you the story of who I am. So many stories of who I am. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Citi, and everybody at the Clio Awards for presenting me with the Clio Music Impact Award. It means a lot to me as an artist to be acknowledged. As an artist, my job is really to be a storyteller through song and with my voice. And when I was younger, I think that I felt that it was important as a woman to be one of the many storytellers telling the story of the other half of the human race in an industry when so few women were platformed. As I got a little bit older, I realized that telling those stories was important, but not as important as platforming, uplifting, and amplifying other women so that they could tell the stories of the other half of the human race. As I've gotten even older, just a few days away from my 40th birthday, I realized that telling stories of the other half of the human race, facilitating other women and telling their stories isn't even enough. But it's more important even that we facilitate, platform, and amplify women of color and LGBTQ plus women so that the stories of all of the world could be told in a way that's impactful and helps young girls who turn to us, turn to pop culture, turn to movies and music, so on and so forth, for representation and mirroring. Thank you for this acknowledgement. If you can see her, you can hear her. Thanks, y'all.
Brandy, I am thrilled to be here with you today. Enabling progress towards a more equitable world is a passion that we at Citi share with you. And we all know the dismal stats. A mere 22% of artists, 12% of songwriters, and only 2% of producers are women, despite representing half of all digital music consumers. So while there's a clear problem, we see immense opportunity, which is why in partnership with the ANA, Citi helped launch the See Her, Hear Her initiative to improve the representation of women and girls in music. It's so important for young girls to see themselves represented. And we always say, if you can see it, you can be it. And so at Citi, we are excited to be honoring you with the Clio Music Impact Award for the impact that you are making on the movement to increase gender equality and inclusion in the music industry and beyond. And this award is just the latest in a string of major accomplishments, including a New York Times bestselling memoir, Broken Horses. Congratulations, and I'm so happy that you're here with us today.
I'm so happy to be with you. Thank you so much for all the kind words and the acknowledgement and for all the work that you guys are doing to address this important issue.
Thank you. So let's just jump right into it because we have a lot to talk about and I know everybody is so eager and anxious to hear from you. And here's my first question. At Citi, we know the important role representation plays in narrowing the pay gap, and we've been committed to transparency and accountability in driving progress in this area in finance. Given the extreme gender imbalance in the music business that we just talked about in the stats, how do you address it as an individual in the industry, and how can brands and a movement like See Her, Hear Her help drive change?
Well, as I've gotten older, I have taken to addressing it fundamentally in terms of how I conduct my tours, compilations that I'll appear on, festival stages, just creating a personal connection with bookers and promoters and people that are planning and sort of curating these things to make sure that an appropriate number of women are being included, that an appropriate number of people of color are being included, and that an appropriate number of LGBTQ plus people are being included. And not just in pedestrian ways, but in meaningful ways, making sure that if I'm going to be on, a headlining stage at a festival, that at least one other day, another woman is going to be headlining, or that they're not going to be relegated to beer gardens and side stages, but they're going to be put in prominent, penultimate positions on stage. So these kinds of things are not things that I paid attention to 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, when I probably still should have been. But it's one of those lessons that I've just learned as I've gotten older and tried to implement more and more in the way I conduct myself as an artist.
It's such a great lesson for all of us, right? Using the platform that we have, and it's never too late to actually make an impact. So that's wonderful. I am certainly a fan of your all-female supergroup, the High Women. Can you talk about what drove you to create the group and how it could impact country music?
Well, one of the things that drove me to helping to create the group was that I was raised in rural Washington State, out in the Cascade foothills, which is where I still live now, creature of habit. And I grew up listening to country music. We called it country and Western music because, we're from the West, so we wanted to believe that we could do country too. And actually, it was like we were so fond of it that, I came from a family environment where it was kind of assumed that that was the appropriate music to listen to. That music is wholesome. That music is the story of people's like us and our lives. And I do feel that even though I'm queer, that I had ample representation in that genre, at least in the form of other women telling stories about things that are, not about being in a pickup truck or having a koozie of beer for the day, but, about falling in love and having careers and wanting to travel the world and see wide open spaces, as the chicks put it back in that time. Right. I had Reba and I had Tanya and I had Dolly. And then now I'm a mother, I'm raising girls, and cut to 2016 from the 80s when I started listening to country music, and we have one woman with a number one hit on radio in 2 years. Mm-hmm. And that's a stark difference. That's a really good example of progress going backward, which it can do when we allow it to. And so that's why I wanted to start the High Women. I wanted to be a part of, if I could, shining a light on a different kind of woman, a different kind of life than that may be portrayed in rural country music. Just because, like I said, as a kid, it was what I was given, what I was allowed to listen to. And I think about little girls listening to country music in rural areas now, who may or may not be queer, may or may not be different. And I want them to have something because I had something.
Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible. In the corporate world, I would say that the events of the past year have been a real tipping point for companies who kind of now recognize that using their balance sheets for good is the right thing to do. Increasingly, I think companies are recognizing that focusing on social purpose and operating in the best interest of society is actually critical to long-term success. It can no longer sit on the side as a nice to do. It becomes an integrated part of business. Are you seeing the same in the music industry? And what responsibility do you feel that musicians with a platform have to address societal challenges like equity? I don't even, I mean, just hearing you, it sounds like you feel like you have so much responsibility personally as well for that. But how do you feel like other musicians with a platform, what do you think their responsibility is to address equity?
It's such an individual and an emotional concept, how much responsibility you want to take on for the world at any given time. I feel really grateful to take on that responsibility. I think it's a good job. It's a good gig to have if you can get it. And the reason I feel like that is because I had it, because I had representation and I had the people that feel the way that I feel, who are, 10 to 20 years older than me. And so that's kind of what I've always aspired to do, almost as much as music in general, is just to be that. And not in an entirely selfless way, but because it actually does my heart good. It actually brings me spiritual fulfillment to be that kind of artist and that kind of public person. It makes me happy, and it makes me think maybe my kids will be proud of me for being that way one day. So it's just personal choice, but I like being that kind of an artist and that kind of a public person.
Yeah, we're grateful that you are. I think it's not just your girls that you are making really proud, and they can see themselves. So that's wonderful. Speaking of girls, my daughter Noor is my inspiration. She's certainly my source of strength in everything I do, and I'm deeply passionate about doing my part in creating a better future for her and all the girls and women that come after me. You said it. You have 2 young girls with your wife, Catherine. How has motherhood influenced your involvement and thinking about gender equality, and what words of wisdom do you have to pass on to them?
Oh my God, the words of wisdom are just never ending. How old's your daughter? I think I heard you mention she was 13.
Yeah, she's almost 14. Almost
okay.
14.
I mean, you're probably having more meaningful conversations about this with her than I'm having with mine. With mine, it's about like getting the right storybooks, princesses wear pants, or like girls who rock, stories of, my kids, they worship Michaela DePrince, who is just the incredible ballerina. You got to look into her what she's overcome. She's absolutely amazing. Michaela DePrince or Amelia Earhart. They think that these are people. They know that these are people in history and now who've done like extraordinary things. And so what we basically do is we just try to make all of their dreams accessible. We want them to know that they could be the lead in Black Swan, or that they could fly an airplane around the world, or that they could be the president or vice president someday. So we tell them stories about women that have been able to break through those barriers. And my hope is that by the time they're your daughter's age, almost 14, that they'll be less few and far between.
Yeah, that's right. It's so interesting. My daughter's a dancer, so we do know and talk about Michaela quite a bit.
You know Michaela? Okay, that's great. Everyone should know Michaela DePrince.
Everyone should. But it is, I mean, this notion of just normalizing it and telling the stories at such an early age is really important. Again, going back to this notion, if they can see her, they can feel like they can be her, which is an incredible kind of place to be as a little girl. So I think it's lovely that you're starting as early as you are with those stories. So we're going to pivot a little bit and talk a little bit more about, as we head into Pride Month, I'd love to talk a little bit more about LGBTQ plus representation in the music industry. And you've been previously quoted on how it's very important for you to be out as an artist because of the hope that it could potentially give others in the LGBTQ plus community. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's important for me as an artist and just a public facing person to be out of the closet, but also to tell stories about, my journey into parenting and marriage. I was married while the Defense of Marriage Act was still in place federally, and it was a major struggle for us for all kinds of reasons. And it seems like that was further back in history than it was. And so I think it's just like we have to just talk about it as much as we can to remind people that progress can go backward.
Yeah.
And it's also important because, all the images that queer people have been given for as long as I can remember have been so heteronormative that it's really hard, I think, when you can't picture yourself in a situation, a parenting situation, or a domestic situation, because you haven't really had the pop culture and the television and the commercials and the photographs and the music to sort of like hand you at least a version of what your life could look like. I don't think any of us want to admit it, but a lot of us are defined in our youth by pop culture and the ways that we're portrayed. And there just wasn't enough LGBTQIA representation for me when I was young. And so I really value the representation I did have. And I strive to be a little corner of that in my own way to queer people.
I love the notion that, again, authenticity and being able to be who you are is really, really important. In fact, I would tell you, I'm not sure if you're aware, but last fall, we at Citi became the first major US bank to offer trans and non-binary customers the ability to use their self-identified chosen first name on eligible US credit cards. And it was just so moving to hear from customers and even our own employees about how it made them feel recognized, accepted, empowered to be given a card that actually matches their true self and their name. And we've already had over 10,000 people that have changed their names so that they can be seen for who they are. And, we talk a lot about what's in a name. It's one of the first things we say when we introduce ourselves to somebody else. And, how do you think allies of the LGBTQIA community can help foster a culture and environment where people feel comfortable expressing their true, authentic selves?
Well, first of all, I didn't know that. And thank you for telling me. That's really brilliant. I could see how a detail like that might be seemingly small to a person that's not in that reality every day would be life affirming to someone else. And so that's really beautiful and cool to hear that. I think things like that, I think things like asking people how they're comfortable being addressed would be a beautiful new change in the way that we deal with each other professionally, no matter what field that we work in. Also, I think that holding doors open for people, LGBTQIA plus people, to get through, and pulling each other through when, as another queer person, you get through in your workplace, whatever that is, instead of being concerned that the door is being held open and too many people who identify as non-binary or queer are getting through is a problem, but seeing it as good for you or as helpful, trying to get as many people into empowering positions as you can that are different, I think could only make all of our lives a whole lot more interesting and a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what advice would you give to LGBTQIA people who are struggling with identity and self-expression? How did you stay resilient?
I would say go to music and go to people, find other people, assemble groups of emotional and spiritual support around yourself. That's what I do when I struggle.
That's lovely. So I want to talk a little bit about giving back, because I know that that's really important to you. And to your point earlier, as much as you have accomplished in the world of music, you certainly have also accomplished even more in some cases in changing people's lives and communities. So you have raised over $1 million for children in conflict, who bring aid to children in conflict zones around the world. Can you tell us why that cause was so important to you, and how your Cover Stories album came to benefit the cause?
Yeah, when my first child, Evangeline, was born, we were hearing, and we're hearing every day, but at the time we're hearing just harrowing and heartbreaking stories out of Syria about the plight of displaced peoples. And at this time, I was taking in these things and also simultaneously preparing a life of relative safety for my child, and understanding that there is no such thing as other people's children, and feeling an almost, if it weren't for my wife, debilitating sense of empathy about the fact that the only difference between my child and any of these people's children who they were, fleeing their homes with and spending decades in refugee camps, was just geography. And I was struggling to cope with it, and my wife came up with a concept of Cover Stories and aligning with War Child Children in Conflict to raise money and awareness about the plight of displaced peoples. But as that conflict unfolded, and as we saw what happened here in our southern border and continues to happen, I started to realize that the plight of displaced peoples is rampant. It's everywhere. It's people who are asylum seekers, refugees, economic migrants, and migrants and immigrants of all kind, who are all the same thing to me. And none of them are any less deserving of a place to start a life and live in safety and prosperity. So I am really moved by and motivated by helping displaced people all across that spectrum that I just mentioned.
It's just an incredible show of humanity. Even when you talk about the debilitating empathy, almost, I can just feel it coming through. How have your fans and your fan club, the Bramley, contributed to the success of the Looking Out Foundation and your campaigns?
The Bramley are like, it's not really, it's like a fan alliance, and they are the Looking Out Foundation. They are a small group of people who are friends and allies that we communicate with regularly, and they help us in our campaigns, in our causes. They help us raise money and awareness. They get their hands dirty. They show up and volunteer if they don't have money to bring to the table, which is immensely helpful too. And then they also find, source need, and alert us to it. And that's why we've been able to have a racial justice fund this last year. We had a COVID release fund, and we branch out into many different areas of need. As an artist, for me, that's been cornerstone to what I feel passionate about, what I like to do. I fell in love with, became obsessed with Elton John over a 5th grade book report about Ryan White. And so the first thing I learned about Elton John before ever hearing his music was I learned about the Elton John AIDS Foundation. And I remember thinking that is just part of this 360-degree view of what an artist is. And it seemed to me as normal as the fact that he played piano or sang songs. And a lot of my hero worship, which is what it is, kind of evolved along those lines, whether it was Neil Young and Bridge School or Willie Nelson, Farm Aid. I started noticing that all the artists whose music I loved also had this major element of activism as a part of their art. And the Bramley knows that. That's how we became what we are. That's how the Looking Out Foundation became what it is.
Mm. So we have a couple more questions for you. We're going to pivot more into your career and how you've grown your career. And right behind your shoulder is your book, your best-selling book, your #1 New York Times best-selling book, Broken Horses. So you have congratulations on that, and you have had quite the start to the year. So what's in store for you next?
Well, my album is done, so I'm getting ready to put out an album, which is all consuming in every way possible. All I can think about is singing the songs that I wrote for that album on stage. The pandemic has been such a strange reality for me because I'm a songwriter and a singer, but really I'm mostly a performer. And so nothing ever feels real until I'm performing it for somebody. So this album is just like, it doesn't feel real yet. It's like a movie. It's not my real life. So as soon as I get up on that stage for the first time and I sing 2 or 3 of those songs, I think that I'll be able to look ahead, a few more steps ahead of what's ahead of me. But all I can think about right now is singing the album.
Oh, it's lovely. Speaking of singing and music, it's becoming more and more central to the creative process across so many creative industries, whether you think of film and TV, gaming, even brand marketing. How do you think artists and brands can work together most effectively?
I think they can work together most effectively if they come together from a place of exactly what we're talking about today, which is platforming and uplifting marginalized people and giving people who have become disenfranchised or lack a voice or a platform for whatever reason, the microphone. And amplifying marginalized people, I think, will create a more interesting, more diverse, and a more beautiful world for us all in society that we can all be proud to live in.
That's wonderful. And my last question for you, are there any new artists out there that we should be adding to our playlist?
Yes. They may or may not be new to you, but some of the artists that are relatively new to me that I'm adding to my playlist are Katie Pruitt, amazing, Amethyst Kia, Allison Russell, and if you're not hip to Yola yet, get hip to Yola.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm going to go Google a couple of those so that I haven't heard of. So I'm excited. Brandy, it has been such a pleasure to meet you and to speak with you and spend time with you. Thank you for being an incredible advocate for gender equality and inclusion and people more generally. Here is to more women, both in front of and behind the mic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, Brandy and Carla are a tough act to follow.
True, but I think I know a great way. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2020-2021 Gold Clio Music Award winners. Let's see who earned those statues.
amazing work. Congratulations to all the winners. If you want to know more about this year's recipients, head over to clios.com.
And stick around, as we will be honoring the 2020-2021 Grand Clio Music winners and the Of the Year recipients later in the show.
We all know this past year has been tough. So many of our normal activities, the things that help us stay sane, they all came to a sudden stop. One thing that both of us have missed the most is the experience of live music.
Or live anything.
Exactly. Being in a venue full of music fans and feeling the energy of the artists on stage, it's a feeling that isn't easy to replicate. And with venues being shuttered across the globe, it's a feeling that was at risk of disappearing altogether in so many communities. Recognizing that threat, an incredible organization formed in the early days of April 2020. Ordinary people who operate venues and organize festivals were suddenly facing extraordinary circumstances. They came together as the National Independent Venue Association and acted quickly to lobby the federal government and secure funding for their own and their competitors' survival. Ultimately, with the support of today's presenter and many others, they brought to life the Save Our Stages Act, which has earmarked $16 billion in relief for independent venues across the country to recover from losses due to shutdowns.
And presenting the award today is one of NEVA's greatest allies, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chuck Schumer, Majority Leader of the United States Senate, and I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled, to be here today to present the 2020-2021 Clio Music Impact Award to my dear friends at the National Independent Venue Association. This pandemic had devastated our independent venues across the country. It was clear from the start of this horrible virus that our venues would be the hardest hit places. And they're the places where people can laugh, dance, and listen to music together, and who knows, meet each other and form long-term and permanent relationships. It happens all the time. NEVA formed just weeks after the shutdown started and set out on a journey to save independent live venues across the country. Starting without connections or political experience, they channeled their passion, their energy, their creativity into an extraordinary grassroots messaging campaign to bring relief to our beloved venues through the Save Our Stages Act. Together, we pushed through over $16 billion in funding for these locally owned venues. We provided a lifeline so many vital businesses that are the very wellsprings of our culture could survive this awful pandemic. And the impact of NEVA's advocacy has been enormous. All across America, independent live venues that would have faced certain closure will now survive and bring us joy as we move forward from this dark, dark moment. So on behalf of the Clio Music Awards, I'm just honored, delighted, thrilled to present the 2020-2021 Clio Music Impact Award to the National Independent Venue Association. We love you, and we know for our venues, the best days are still ahead of us.
The impact to me as a small business owner is undescribable. We're not able to do what I've been doing for 26 years.
It's impossible. There's just no way to pay anything. The challenge is that we have a giant space with very high overhead, and our model is based solely on social gatherings, and we can't socially gather safely. Therefore, we can't make revenue that we need to pay for all of the bills that we have.
COVID strikes at the very heart of our business, which is bringing people together to gather in spaces just like this, just like XBK, and we can't do that.
The difficulty for us compared to other industries, when other industries start to go back to work and they start hiring their people back, we're still going to be in the place that we are because we are very, very likely, as we were the first to close, to be one of the last businesses to reopen.
And overall, when it comes to what it's going to take for us to start back up, that's another long-term situation of at least 3 months or more.
We are huge taxpayers and we pay a ton of money in sales tax. We're a decently large employer and we generate a big economic impact.
We're completely shuttered. There's just not any work for anyone to be doing.
My greatest fear is not reopening.
Thank you to the Clios for this 2020-2021 Clio Music Impact Award on behalf of NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association. Thank you to the millions, literally the millions of people who showed their support, the thousands of artists, the elected officials, Senator John Cornyn, Senator Amy Klobuchar, Senator Chuck Schumer, those that donated money, those that donated their time, the many volunteers we've had, the 3,000 members across every single state and DC and many of the territories, their staff that was also put to work, whether they were being paid to or whether they weren't able to be paid for it. Thank you. Thank you to NIVA's board, to NIVA's advisory board. Thank you to Stephen Chilton, who came up with the Save Our Stages name, and that turned into a piece of legislation. Thank you to Dana Frank, NIVA's board president. Thank you to Hal Reel, NIVA's board secretary and the board president of the National Independent Venue Foundation. He and I had a conversation literally 3 weeks earlier saying, wouldn't it be cool if we did something like this? And sure enough, this is what ended up happening. Thank you to Michael Henry from Media Whisper, who has been dominating the social media presence on behalf of all of our members and NIVA overall. Thank you to my fellow award recipients, to Audrey Fix-Schaefer, to Lenora Jules, to Jason Greel. Thank you to our families, our work families, and most importantly, thank you to our actual families. They all put up with us for, missing dinners, missing weekends, missing holidays, missing time where we could have been spending it with our families and our loved ones. And I'd like to think that we were spending it with our loved ones, just in a different way and different loved ones. But thank you to all of our families for being understanding and supportive throughout all of this. So thank you again. Thank you to the Clios. Thank you.
I wore this Save Our Stages mask on the floor of the Senate when we passed the Save Our Stages Act. It brought us good luck, and I'm going to keep it with me whenever our stages need help.
Their story is so inspiring, we had to find out more. So Tim Nudd, editor-in-chief of Muse by Clio, sat down with the leaders of the organization to hear more about NIVA's mission.
All right, hi everybody. Tim Nudd here with Muse by Clio, and thrilled to be moderating a discussion today all about NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association, which is the recipient of the 2020-2021 Clio Music Impact Award. This award is hugely well-deserved for the remarkable work that NIVA has done, really as the leading voice for America's independent venues at a time of existential crisis for them, as so many venues have been pushed to the brink of collapse due to COVID-19. NIVA was formed in April of 2020, just 3 weeks into the pandemic in the US, and managed to get legislation, national legislation passed in just 8 months, creating a true lifeline for the industry, although there is still a lot left to do. So I'm pleased to welcome my guests today. First of all, Reverend Moose, co-founder and executive director of NIVA, also co-founder and managing partner of Marauder. Audrey Fix-Schaefer, board member and communications director at NIVA, also communications director for IMP venues, the 930 Club, Lincoln Theater, the Anthem, and Merriweather Coast Pavilion. Lenora Jules, CMO at Pabst Theater Group in Milwaukee, a NIVA member, also marketing committee chair at NIVA. And Jason Garrell, art director of Pabst Theater Group and head of design for NIVA. Thank you all for joining me so much. We'll get into everything you guys have been doing over the past year soon, but first, really, to me, the most important thing is, where are we now? We're recording this in mid-May. The Save Our Stages Act was passed in December. People are excited about seeing live music again, but I know a lot of venues are still waiting to see funds. So I'd love to hear from all of you guys sort of where things stand for NIVA members today and how that whole process is going.
Yeah, I mean, I think the where are we now can be somewhat answered by how this is happening at the moment. You know, we're not yet able to reopen fully across the country. We're not yet able to congregate in the rooms and enjoy the live music and entertainment and comedy that you know, we all want to be able to enjoy so much and be with each other. And I haven't even met you know, the other panelists, so it's like, you know, there's the ability to just you know, see each other in person. We're not yet there. The last 14 months has seen the creation of NEVA. It's seen the launch of the Save Our Stages campaign that was originally intended as a rallying cry. It ended up being a piece of legislation and then signed into bill on December 27th. Now it's more formally known as the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. We are hoping that those funds will be distributed as soon as possible, because we're still trying to put the pieces together from this last year. In many ways, we've had such an amazing, accomplished, successful year. But the one core element that we've been fighting for from the very, very first conversation, we've not yet been able to celebrate. So hopefully by the time this is being seen, that will be in hindsight, and we will be celebrating that as well. Because, you know, really we want to be able to make these institutions whole. We want to make sure that they're there for the future generations. We want to make sure they're there for this generation. And we ultimately we want to be able to enjoy the live events that bring so much meaning to our lives to begin with.
Yeah, Audrey, how do you feel about where we're at right now?
Well, it is, when you said that it took us 8 months to pass the bill to get legislation where we got $16 billion that is earmarked for independent venues across the country and also promoters and festivals. Those 8 months, if you were to ask me how long did it take, I would have told you 856 years. That's what it felt like, because it was as though we were taking a cement-filled wheelbarrow that we had to push up Mount Everest. And because it's not an easy thing to do, but we were a gang of perfect strangers, all with the hope that we could save our own businesses. And then quickly, once we started to get to know each other, I guess you would say, on Zoom, we were fighting for each other. And none of us could have possibly gotten this accomplished to save our industry had we been on our own. We needed to do it together. And we are still, as was noted, the relief was promised about 5 months ago, and it has still not come to a reality to the organization's bank account. So we are still pushing. But hopefully by the time you hear this, as Moose said, it will have arrived. And I can say that, well, one thing I would note is that the champions that we were able to bring on board with us were in congressional champions, for starting with Senator Klobuchar from Minnesota and John Cornyn from Texas, and then Senator Schumer from New York, who was just an incredible champion, understanding that these venues aren't just places of business. They're small, they're owned by small business people, but that bring enormous value to their local communities. So it's not just about saving the arts, it's about saving the local economy. There was a study out of Chicago that showed for every dollar spent at a small music venue, $12 of economic activity was realized for the area community. So that made our mission bipartisan. And it was one of those rare things in 2020 that people could agree on. And so it was a hard fought 8 months. But with that came the opportunity to meet people like Lenora and Jason, who without them, I don't know that we could have done any of this, because of their marketing strengths, their ability to rally people and ideas and organize. And especially when you think that all these volunteers that came together, and we're all volunteers. We now have 3,000 members and we're in every state. We've never worked before together, so we had to learn how to do that. And everybody's used to calling their own shots. If I would underscore one word in the name of the association, the National Independent Venue Association. It would be independent, as in fiercely, as in we're all used to running our own show and making our own decisions. But we, as a group of type A strangers, got to come together, and it was with the help of Lenora and Jason as well.
Yeah, Lenora and Jason, I'd love to hear some of you from Milwaukee and what it was like to get involved in this project over the last year.
Well, I'll say I was extremely excited to get involved in the project. And I think that, you know, speaking with you today is obviously a very different place than we were a year ago. It was very difficult to discern, you know, what we would be able to accomplish because something like this hasn't been done before for independent venues in the entertainment industry. And taking on, you know, we were in a totally different realm, right? Because all of us are entertainment people. We're not politicians. And we were basically going to Congress, doing something we've never done before, working with people we had never seen or met before, and deciding that this was important to us, but also trying to, you know, get public support for our message and our mission during a time when the public was facing so much. You know, there was the pandemic. There was the Black Lives Matter movement. There were so many things happening in the world in general that to try to push our message to the forefront while still being sensitive of the other messages and issues that were facing the United States and the world, being sensitive to those issues for the US and globally, truly, was a challenge. And I think that we did it in a sensitive way and in a way that made our voices heard and in a way that got it across the finish line, which we didn't even know if we could do when we first started. There were only a handful of venues, so to have grown it to 3,000 venues, to have gotten millions of signatures from the public when the public was also struggling, it really meant a lot to see the impact we had in the entertainment industry, and you know, just all the way down to an usher who's going to need a job, and if we can't come back, that usher can't get a job. So it was important from the top down, and it felt really great to be able to be a part of it.
Jason, how do you feel about working on this sort of with your background in design?
It's hard to put into words. It was, you know, it's just it was an incredible journey and ride, and just being able to lend my talents to like such a diverse and like positive group of people that are all trying to survive was just, it was like, it's been the honor of my life, honestly. It's been the honor of my life to be able to do it. And I remember getting the phone call on, I think it was a Saturday night, Easter Saturday night, and hopped on a phone with Moose and Gary Witt, our CEO, and hey, we need a logo. And I was like, okay, what are we making a logo for? And I was, NEVA. I'm like, what is NEVA? And from there, I was, you know, it's hit the ground running. And ever since, it's just like, just seeing everybody come together. I think Audrey and Moose have both said this. It's just like, it's pretty incredible to see, and all these independent groups across the country come together and fight for a common cause and just come out on top. It's been pretty incredible. As you can see, it's amazing. It's been an amazing journey. So
yeah. Lenora, something you said struck me, you know, that people were dealing with so much in 2020, but I feel like one of the interesting things about, you know, the last year is how much we've come to realize how central live shows are to our lives, and that it's not a nice to have, it's not an add-on, it's pretty central. Was that something that energized you guys the whole way throughout this?
Absolutely, because, you know, when we started this, it's like you have to recognize that this was an idea. It wasn't a mission that had been happening for years. Most people have been lobbying Congress for years. Most people have had their mission in the public for years, their logo, their brand, their design. We literally were starting from nothing, and like literally nothing. And to us, it was extremely important because we work in entertainment. It's our livelihood, right? I mean, we can't pay the bills, you know, like we're closing. Venues are closing, trying to stay alive, trying to pay bills, trying to keep people employed. But on top of that, in order to take the idea from 0 to 100 and to get all of the support that Audrey and Moose and Dana and Jason, we get everyone to come together, donate their time, and get the support of the general public was a challenge because the general public was also losing their jobs, also had industries that were challenged, and then trying to be in front of Congress for something that they had never even given a second thought to was incredibly difficult. But I think what the people showed was that not only for us working in the industry, but for them to receive and have normalcy in their own personal lives, for them to have the inspiration of a song or a play, or to laugh at a comedian was essential to them to have that normalcy in their lives. And I think what everyone said was, obviously still more important to have a home, food, health, safety, but this was essential to the spirit of the people in the United States. And I think that is what was encouraging to us and inspiring to us to continue to push forward. And we didn't know if we were going to get support. I mean, the first phone call when we were together saying, okay, how are we going to get bipartisan support? I've done that before. But knowing that people signed on to say, hey, we support you. So we said, okay, well, we believe in it. People are supporting us. They feel this is inspiring to them and important to them. We got to get this across the finish line. We got to figure out how to do it. So it was really, because there was no road. I mean, there was no path, no road, no, like, this is definitely going to happen. You just have to follow X, Y, and Z. It truly was grassroots, ground level, marketing and footwork that got it across the finish line. And if people didn't support us and hadn't said, hey, we support you, this is important to us, then I think that it may not have come to fruition. So I really do think people supporting us was extremely, extremely important in getting the effort across the finish line.
Yeah. Okay. Moose and Audrey, I'm wondering about, once legislation became the North Star for NEVA, what that process was like. I mean, that's intimidating for anyone to try to engage Congress on any level. So can you talk a little bit about engaging Senator Schumer and others and how you got the relationship through there and what the challenges were?
Well, sure. I'm glad to talk about that. And the weekend that Jason was referring to, that Easter weekend, we were on calls interviewing lobbying firms in DC. And the first thing we did was to, after a bunch of interviews, select a company, Aiken Gump, that is, they fought for us as though they were us, and we could not be here without them as well. And as Lenora said, none of us had ever lobbied the federal government. So we needed Aiken Gump to help us learn how to do that. How do you get funding when everybody else is looking for funding in this once in 100-year pandemic? And also, Capitol Hill was closed. You were not allowed to move about Washington, D.C. So we needed an organization that had the contacts already in their phone and not somebody who was trying to establish it. And so what we did is as we were adding members, carved up the country into precincts, and Aiken Gump came on and we had precinct captains, they're volunteer members, and they taught us, okay, you're going to need to call your senator and your representative, and this is how you do it. This is how you say it. And you're also going to need to get all the other members in your area to be a part of it, so they understand that their constituents really care about this. And as Lenora was saying, we needed also, because we didn't exist, why would a legislator pick up a phone or have their staff even talk to us, because everybody else is looking for help? I'm not sure which genius in one of these squares did it, but started the website saveourstages.com after, and that was a way for the general public to be able to, one, learn about our issue, and two, have their voices heard. And we were able to get 2.1 million emails sent to Congress through that website, and which was phenomenal. And everybody in lobbying say that's just completely unheard of, but it told members of Congress, oh, this is important to my constituents. I'm going to listen. And in the end, we had 230 co-sponsors to this legislation, and it was bipartisan in both houses. So, and the other thing that we had, although, we hadn't existed before, we had no name recognition in the beginning, but we were able to take inventory of a couple of things that we did have, and that is all the members' customer mailing lists. We asked all the members to get information out to their customers, because that's who's going to care if we can reopen, and when it was safe to do so. And the other constituency that would care if we could reopen are the artists. And we also know that they have a big voice on Capitol Hill and also with their fans. So another set of programs were developed in marketing programs to get the artists to sign on. And we had more than 1,000 artists. Patrick Wilson was the head of that committee, but with all the tools that marketing had provided, artists were able to sign letters to Congress and also post information on their socials to engage more grassroots support. And with that combination, we were able to capture the imagination of Capitol Hill. But it was also about how we can be part of the economic renewal for our communities when it's safe to reopen. And now that's what we're close to.
Yeah. Moose, do you feel like you brought some of your experience, in music marketing, music industry, to bear on this project? And how similar were the skills involved and how different?
Well, in addition to the advocacy and learning how to advocate, I think the one thing that none of us really want to acknowledge is how difficult this campaign was compared to anything else that we've ever done. And not just because of the speed at which it had to run and the hours that it took. And I don't think it's an overstatement to say that, especially in those first 6, 7, 8 months, most of us were working an unhealthy amount of hours. And that's usually the accepted norm in this industry. So when I'm telling you it's an unhealthy amount of hours, I mean, truly, it was a consuming effort, nights, weekends, 7 days a week for months on end without a single break. But really, I think from like compared to traditional marketing efforts, it was very frustrating that we would put plans in place and they would change instantly. And I know everyone on this call can understand that, because communications and marketing is all about the planning. This is the end goal. This is what we're working towards. And we didn't have that luxury. We would put plans in place, and before the day ended, they were gone. Like they were just completely scrapped. Full designs. I mean, bless Jason and Lenora and Audrey, because, like putting together designs and websites and marketing plans and press releases and then being told we don't need it was a daily occurrence. But we had to move so quickly because when we did need it, it needed to happen instantly. And this was not just for the squares on the screen. It was every single one of our members that were reacting in the same way. We would send out a notice on one day that says, call these people, say this thing. And 4 hours later, we'd say, call those people, say that thing. And that was just how fast we had to move. It was the different pieces of legislation that we were pursuing. It was the senators and the representatives that we were calling. It was the artists that were reaching out and working on behalf. It was the fundraisers that we were doing. All of these different elements. It moved so quickly, and it consumed everybody. The fortuitous side of nobody having any other work to do is that those efforts and the energy and the time was able to be spent on this one project that was so important. And of course, the downside of that, it meant that we had a lot of volunteers that were out of work. And so people were when they could have otherwise been spending times with their families and pursuing new potential career avenues, they were spending that time helping NEVA and the members within NEVA to be able to more likely reopen. And that, we had several hundred venues and promoters had closed for good through this process. And it happened, I would say, pretty quickly in the beginning side of things. And then as NEVA took shape, as the legislation took shape, you saw those slow down. And I'd like to think that NEVA had a direct hand in saving as many of those venues as we possibly could, because it felt like help was on the way. Help is on the way. Help is here. and it just wasn't, it didn't exist before. So part of what we were doing wasn't just telling the elected officials this is what we need. It was also telling other members of our own community, hey, we're working together, and this is what we're working towards. And those messages got to landlords, they got to banks, they got to employees. Like everybody was able to hear this and hold out that we'd be able to reopen and hopefully soon.
Another challenge that I think shouldn't be forgotten this year that occurred last year was Audrey, God bless you, because it was an election year and there were, I mean, a pandemic, race issues, and an election year that had the largest turnout ever. So clearly, tons of messaging from both parties. And then somehow Audrey being able to get us press and headlines and, get people in the community and in the press interested in actually discussing and covering what it is we were fighting for. I mean, God bless you, because I am telling you, I know from a marketing and advertising perspective how hard it is to get your name out there during an election year, and somehow Audrey was able to navigate it all, which is why a lot of the messages had to be moved because this politician said this, and now we got to move it back a day, and that politician said that, so we need to move this here. And thank you to all the politicians that supported, because they were going through a lot of controversial things on their end too. So to get bipartisan support is truly unheard of. But Audrey, wow.
That's amazing.
Well, thank you. And the other thing I would add is that two things I was reminded of too. Every time we had a conversation with a legislator, in addition to explaining our business, which we had never done before because we've never had to. These are small businesses and business people that have always been able to figure it out, recalibrate no matter what the financial situation was or whatever crisis had come up. But this is obviously a situation when you have zero revenue and you have all the overhead that there was just no way to rejigger that. But while we were communicating, I was always, and I think we're always very mindful, is we were fighting for the survival of our industry because there would be a mass collapse, but we also had to be incredibly sensitive to other things. People were losing their family members and their friends. And we never wanted to do anything other than to be sensitive toward that. Most everybody had to furlough 95, 98% of their employees, which is devastating. These are our families, but we weren't allowed to have them in our places of business. So when we were advocating for the Save Our Stages Act, we were also always hand in hand talking about, can you please extend the unemployment insurance and also the pandemic unemployment assistance package on top of that, because our people don't have any place to work. They would love to, but it's not like you could just lift up and go to another town to do this, because nowhere could you. And they couldn't get other jobs as bartenders in a different place because nowhere could you. So that was something we were also worried about too. And then the aspects of our country turned upside down with grief and horror when we watched the murder of George Floyd. And there's no business or no mission that could possibly not figure out what that means for all of us and what can we do about that. And that we had to set aside what our other mission was and understand what can we do to help our communities. And for instance, just every venue did something different, I'm sure. I'm in DC, the 930 Club, so we had protests. That's where so many of the protests were happening. Of course, it happened in all sorts of cities, but we were able to open up our venue for a safe place for protesters to come because they were also at risk. so they could come use a restroom facility because everything was shuttered. It was the height of the pandemic, and people could wash their hands, they could get something to eat, recharge their batteries. So we as venues and as an industry, we're trying to figure out, okay, what else can we do at this time with that, on top of all the other missions that we had that we're trying to get through as an industry.
Yeah. Well, and also in the midst of all this, you guys managed to put on the Save Our Stages Fest event in October, which I'd love to touch on as well. So in addition to the Clio Music Impact Award, I'm happy to say Neva has also won 2 more Clios and was shortlisted for a 3rd for the Save Our Stages Fest, produced in conjunction with YouTube. You guys raised nearly $2 million, I believe, for venues, which is amazing. I'd love to hear some personal highlights from that event. First of all, I guess, Jason, was it a relief to be promoting an event instead of, dealing with Congress and all that?
It was a great experience. I mean, the YouTube folks are just, I can't say I've ever worked with YouTube personally before, and their team is just fantastic. I have nothing but nice things to say about what they were able to do and how they were able to turn it around. And I mean, really, an incredible, easy amount of time. Short window. I just can't believe putting on something at that scale and that quickly it's unheard of. I mean, it's a festival. Yeah, it's a virtual festival, but it's a festival still. You had to line up all the clubs and, get the talent. It was just, I don't know. It's head spinning is what it really is. It's head spinning. And it was pretty incredible. We were able to pull it off with YouTube's help. So, and all the artists involved.
Yeah, Moose, what's your recollection of that time preparing for that?
Oh, it happened so quickly. I mean, I definitely remember there were a number of conversations where people were saying, it feels good to be back at work again, right? And the work was for each other. YouTube Music had just shown up early, and they were one of the loudest supporters that we could possibly have. We ended up having the SOS Fest on the homepage of Google. It was right there. That's unheard of. And Steven Sternshine, who's one of NEVA's founding board members, executive produced the entire festival. We worked with every single partner we had to pull out every contact or phone number we could potentially reach out to. And it's, the artists all jumped in. It was an easy sell, if you will. The COVID protocols were incredibly strict. So everything was performed in completely shuttered venues that had otherwise not opened up. And I think just even talking to the operators and the owners of those places that had unlocked their doors for the first time in months to be able to welcome in Roots or Miley or the Foo Fighters or whomever, it was just, these were artists that had grown up in these spaces. And so for them to take the time out of their schedules, even if they're not actively busy touring, they still had a lot to do, and they still didn't need to do it for us, for our community. And they chose to. And we saw that time and time again. We've seen that with people picking up the phone and calling their senators or their representatives and saying, this is important to me personally. And we've seen that with people doing press conferences and showing up when they were asked to be able to show up. We've seen it with people doing interviews and op-eds. We've seen it with social media, and the type of community that they reach is just unprecedented. For as much as we're all very proud of the mailing list that we have and the social media reach that we have, it's the artist's world. And we're just a component in the artists' development and their careers and their relationship with their fans. But I think what we saw through this is the independent sector is so important to the development and the growth of not just the artists, but the communities within it. That was where that support came from, was even if it hadn't been discussed in the past, it had to be discussed now. And all of this support was an acknowledgement of what wasn't necessarily at the front of people's minds in the past. And I hope that in the future, as people, look at their own neighborhood businesses and where they're going to spend their hard-earned dollars, as we all hopefully get back to work, I hope they will continue to keep this in the front of their mind as they make their decisions and understand the differences within the businesses that operate in their communities.
Gotcha. A couple more things I want to touch on before we go. First thing is, again, we're heading into the summer of 2021 now. People have to feel safe to going to concerts. Is NEVA involved in sort of messaging around vaccinations and that effort? And how are you guys helping, if you are NEVA members, sort of navigate that whole situation?
Yeah, really good question. The thing that we understand, like so many others do, is that we are a post-vaccine industry, meaning that we really, really, really are hoping that everybody possibly who can, to get a vaccine. And so we've provided messages for members to be able to send to their customer base. I know that most have, if you have a marquee, you have probably messaged about getting vaccines. And it's the type of thing that now, before people couldn't get the vaccine because there weren't enough of them. Now that they have, thankfully, I mean, my goodness, how lucky we are that there are 3 vaccines that most everybody has access to. But there's still components of our community that either are reluctant or don't know where and how to get it if they don't have internet or cell phones to get them the information. And so I know, like, for example, in DC, we got a group of volunteers from the 930 Club to knock on doors in the wards that the mayor had asked for us to get the word out, and dropping off flyers and encouraging people and telling them where they can get their vaccines, where it's something that, and how to get transportation to get there if that's an issue. I think that we all feel like we're part of the voice to be able to get people back in an environment where they feel comfortable and safe and are comfortable and safe. So.
Okay. Really, the last question for you guys that I have is, we're not out of the woods on this yet. And so I'm wondering, the Clio community speaks to a lot of brands and ad agencies. Can brands and agencies help you guys in any way right now over the next few months as we continue to navigate this?
Yeah, it would be great to have the extended help. We've been really fortunate from the very beginning to have corporate help, commercial partners, C-Tickets, E-Tix, Light, all endemic companies that had stepped forward in our first week and just wrote checks. And, I don't want to necessarily sound too crass about it, but we would not have been able to make those early commitments that we did without that support. We certainly got a fair amount of donations directly to NEVA, which was helpful. But we also directed the majority of the donations that we got to the NEVA Emergency Relief Fund, which directly went to help independent venues and promoters who needed financial assistance while we were continuing to fight for the federal legislation that would ultimately, be writing more tangible checks and help people in a more substantial way. The companies that have been part of this are just too numerous to even mention, but they were the ones that have been able to make us help and push this forward in a way, not just for the members, but for the communities too. In a world post-pandemic, as we start thinking about what the future is going to look like, as businesses open up, as events start to happen, as tickets go on sale, that's really where I think there's a lot of opportunities for brands to be more directly engaged with the independent venue and promoter community than what we've been able to do in the past. And we are, an organization, and we do have a lot of different future plans that directly involve those types of tie-ins that weren't possible until this point. So we have, every single state, many of the territories represented, and we are here for good. NEVA is going to be sticking around, and we would welcome working with people in creative and entrepreneurial ways that have mutual benefits to it.
Amazing. Well, I'm in awe of you guys. I hope brands and agencies are listening to that because, thanks to your efforts, there will be many more venues left standing where we can enjoy live shows after this is over. So thank you for all your work, and congrats again on your Clio Awards. So well deserved. And thanks for chatting today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to my panelists, and check out all the Clio music winners today at clios.com. And thank you all for watching.
I can't wait to get back to live events, especially to celebrate the next Clio Music Awards in person, shake hands with the winners, be in a room with our inspiring community.
Next up, we've got more Clio Music winners to reveal. And if you see your work on the screen, don't be shy. Go ahead and share your work on your social channels and tag us at Clio Awards to let everyone know.
That's right. Here are more awards to give out. So in the immortal words of Prince, let's go crazy. Let's get nuts for the 2020-2021 Grand Clio Music Award winners.
We want to be the author of our own destiny.
Ladies and gentlemen, attention please. About to start the show, better take your seats.
If you don't know what that is, and if you don't use Spotify, I feel bad for you.
It's been a while, but I'm back on top. To the world is mine, I don't plan to stop. It's time to let the curtain rise. We're gonna shake the room, we're gonna hold the night. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready for the knockdown, drag out, stand up, get loud? This is how we get down. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, get on your feet, get on out the door, take it to the streets. It's time to let the curtain rise.
Showed me the Renegade Challenge. Great name, by the way.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Now that we're done with that, you want to see my Renegade?
Muse by Clio will be showcasing the people behind each of these extraordinary entries starting tomorrow in a video series that we call Creative Brief. Visit the site for insights about the creation of each project.
And while you're there, check out more of our music coverage, such as liner notes, art of the album, and first note at Muse by Clio.
Okay, Rachel, this has been so fun, but I think it's finally time for us to reveal Clio Music's first ever of the year winners.
Let's hit it.
Using the same process we've used for years at Clio, we aggregate and assign trophy points to our entire winners list. Points are based on entrant credits and also ownership of recordings or composition used in winning entries. Here now are the 2021 Clio Music Label, Publisher, and Agency of the Year winners.
I got the spotlight shining on me, no doubt about it. The night is mine, see, cutting up a rug, there's a groove I found. I'll make you rock like you cannot believe. Talk about a party, now let's get crazy, amazing. What you know about this? I feel like dancing. This music moves my soul. No hesitation.
Well, that's all the show we have for you folks. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our honorees and getting to see the award-winning work.
Congratulations to Republic Records, Sony Music Publishing, Spotify's in-house agency team, and to all of our grand, gold, silver, bronze, and shortlist winners. You can see all of the winning work now at the Clio Music Winners Gallery on clios.com. And thank you to Citi, our presenting partner, for supporting the Clio Music mission for the 6th year in a row. Thanks as well to our Impact honorees, Brandy Carlisle and Neva. And to every one of you, the marketers, designers, filmmakers, partnership sync, PR, music supervision teams, all of you who continue to raise the bar with your inspiring creative work, we salute you. Cheers.
Okay, Michael, I think it's time to say goodbye.
In the words of the great Frank Sinatra, and now the end is near. See you at a concert.
Thank you to our presenting partner, Citi. Special thanks to Van Orton Design, Phoenix Media Group, 322X Productions and Creations, Trailer Voice Artists, and Boss Sounds. Clio Music Awards wishes you all a happy and healthy summer and can't wait to see you next year.